So, welcome to this lecture on PowerPoint for reporting. My thanks to Lorna Wall for use of some of her slides. So, what I'm going to be talking about is why and how you might use Microsoft PowerPoint to produce a report. And you're probably used to using Microsoft Word to write essays and produce reports. PowerPoint you will have seen used to create presentations. So you might think PowerPoint is a presentation tool and Word is a report writing tool. So why on earth would you use PowerPoint? So I'm going to try and answer that. One of the main reasons is that PowerPoint is very common in industry for producing reports about user experiences or interaction design. So it's an industry standard method of writing reports. PowerPoint is also easier to share with co-located people. So what does that mean? People in the same room. It's much easier to share a PowerPoint document with people than it is to share a Word document. And part of the reason for that is it's much easier to project a PowerPoint report on the wall so everyone can see it than it is a Word document. Using PowerPoint to write a report also forces you to be concise and keep to the important key points in what you have to say. PowerPoint is also easier for laying out diagrams and charts, tables and images than Word is. And it's also easier to distribute sections because your report is broken down into a number of kind of self-contained slides. There might be sequences of those slides which you could distribute to other people in your project team or other departments in your business. It's much easier to distribute a section of a PowerPoint than it is to extract the relevant bits of a Word document. So that's why you should use PowerPoint for reporting. But using PowerPoint is different from writing in Word. So in what ways is it different? Well, you generally speaking use bullet points rather than paragraphs, so it's much less wordy. There would usually be much less detail being provided. You focus on the key information that you want to report. There's more use of images. Annotated images work well, where you have an image and then maybe a line and some kind of label to explain what it is. You can make use of tables more than you might in a Word document. So there are some differences in how you go about writing in PowerPoint compared to Word. I mentioned the difference between a PowerPoint presentation and a PowerPoint report. So what makes a report different from a presentation? Well, the first thing is the report must be standalone. So in other words, you're not going to be there to explain what's on each slide. So the slides have to be self-contained without any narration from anybody. And there shouldn't be any animations because you must allow for the possibility that the PowerPoint might be distributed as a PDF or it might be distributed as a printout. So no animations. We're going to see a couple of reports where there are some animations in the presentation that I give you, but in the final version those animations wouldn't exist. For the same reason, there shouldn't be any videos embedded in the slides because they won't work, obviously, if they were printed or converted to PDFs. But you can, of course, include links. So you could include a URL link to a video that you've created or another video that's relevant. You should also allow for the possibility, as I mentioned, that even though it's a report, it might be projected in front of a group of people. So you would adopt various techniques to make it easy to see, easy to understand if it's being projected. So you would use larger fonts than you would use in Microsoft Word. People often ask, so is it a business report that we're meant to be writing in PowerPoint, or is it meant to be an academic report? And the answer is a bit of each, really. It's primarily a business report, so you're communicating what you did and what you found out, as you might in a business situation. But there are two key things that make it not just a business report. The first one is that the use of citations would be expected. So you should be referencing academic work, academic conference or journal publications in the body of your report. So it has to have references to academic literature, and also it should consider not just what you found out, but important academic issues. So it's a combination of academic report and business report. So I'm going to give you two examples of PowerPoint reports. I should be clear that these are examples of reports, not examples of the assignment. So their structure and content might be very different from the reports that you're going to create, but they show you how you can use the PowerPoint medium as a mechanism for producing a report. So what would one of these reports look like? Well, I'm going to give you two examples. The first one is a fictional example from Lorna Wall. It's an interactive game on a Sony PlayStation, Little Big Planet. And this report is a user test, a user evaluation of the product. And so I should go back. So this is the first slide of the presentation. It has a picture of, in this case, the device, and a title and the name of the author. You might provide some other information there. Remember that your presentation should be anonymous, so you shouldn't put your name on it. And here is the second slide. It's an overview of the report. So it says there's going to be a project summary, then there will be key findings, and then there will be a summary and next steps, which presumably is the conclusion part. So there are 3 stages, so we know where this report is going. And it's important that just because it's a sequence of slides, you don't forget that the first slides need to introduce things and the final slides need to bring things together as a conclusion. So on to the next slide. This is introducing the section. It's telling us that the project summary is coming up. Here are the objectives: assessing the overall usability, assess the touch controls, assess the difficulty of each level, and the design of the study. There's going to be 5 play sessions over 2 days. There are going to be pre-study interviews and post-study interviews. There's going to be 3 different types of questionnaire. So that's the study design. On to the participants, who the participants are, how many there are. There are 20 participants. There's information on this about their age and gender, so demographic information, and they've been divided into fans and non-fans. Next section heading, key findings. And this slide introduces a way of labeling the priorities of things that were found, and there's a color coding approach. So they've just decided to, for the purposes of this report, to prioritize what they found. So green is good practice. That means that the people don't need to do anything. Yellow is a low priority issue. Fix it if time allows. Orange is a medium priority issue. Probably a good idea to fix it, but it's not hugely serious. High priority issues, and these should be fixed. Critical issues, these are ones that this game should not be let out on anybody until this has been fixed. So this is the prioritizing color coding. And there's also a recommendation, this in blue, and this helps make some suggestions for what people could do to improve something, because this is an evaluation of a product. So then on to the ratings. So the ratings here of the graphics, special effects and music, and there's some qualitative information up the top. The graphics are great. I love the way the different controls are used. Notice the use of color coding again, the green and the red for the priorities. The music is a bit too repetitive. The sound effects are okay, nothing special. On to the difficulty. Remember, one of the objectives was to assess the difficulty of different levels. So there are 13 levels, and here is a bar chart to illustrate a kind of Likert scale from very hard to very easy, how difficult each level is, and you can see there's a lot of variation in the difficulties of the levels. On to the key positives. So the use of consistent color coding made it easier for users to understand. Key issues, so these are the problems that were found. Users found it difficult to target objects using the rear touchpad. And there's some recommendations. Consider adding feedback to show where the fingers are. So that's my first example, and here's another example, perhaps a bit more similar, more of an interaction design type project. So here is the front page of the report. Again, this one has a picture of the product because it's an evaluation of an existing product. Design and evaluation of a physical activity tracker for an urban population. So that's the title, details of the researcher, and the product is Fitbit. And here again, as in the previous report, there's an overview of what's going to be covered. Initial user research, the aims. So these are the objectives of the research. Understand the user's goals, understand their routines, understand things that are not being met, needs that are unmet. And then on to the interviews. Semi-structured interviews are used, 5 users, 20-minute interviews. Some examples of interview questions. There are probably too many questions to put on a slide. So what you do is you pick out the most salient questions, the most interesting questions, or the most obvious questions, given what you're trying to find out, and include them on this slide. And it also explains how analysis was conducted, transcripts were coded, and themes identified. It's very important that you explain how you carry out your analysis. Don't just present the conclusions of the analysis. Say how you analysed your data. That helps the person reading your report make some judgment about how important your conclusions are based on their assessment of that method of collecting data. On to the interview findings. So the thematic analysis showed that users were unhappy with the form of devices, they're unhappy that they didn't track other activities, they're unhappy that they couldn't find out about things like sleep and food and so on. Initial user research cultural probe. So a cultural probe was used for 4 users. So here it is on the left with paper, scissors, pens, a diary, and some postcards on the right. And here are the findings. Users felt annoyed with their trackers. They found problems with not being able to wear them with certain outfits and so on. Some more findings. Users also produced designs for wearable devices. So here's a couple of designs. Personas. So the users that were involved in data collection have been assessed, and some of the typical users have been constructed in the form of personas. There are 2 personas. Here's Jen Barber. She's a 34-year-old female who occasionally walks to work and worries about her appearance, doesn't want to arrive at work with messy hair. And here you can see on the right there's some storyboards, some sketching there, and on the left is the script for the storyboard. And I assume this table should have been filled out. So this is meant to be reflections. This is in the reflection section where you reflect on the methods that you used and what you found were the strengths and weaknesses of interviews and cultural probes. So that's the end of the second report. I just wanted to remind you of the assessment criteria, because whatever you put into your report, it must meet these 8 criteria, which are: describe the product, give a rationale for design, give details of initial user research, develop the ideas through sketching and prototyping, evaluate the prototype, link stages of the design process. So did you need to go back and collect more user data? How does the process work? Was it an iterative process? The last 2 criteria: conciseness of reporting styles. That's one of the things we'll be looking at, is how well you adapted to the use of PowerPoint as a reporting tool rather than Microsoft Word. And the final one is crediting of all sources, especially images. So it's very important, if you have any pictures that you didn't take yourself, images from elsewhere, that you credit the source of those images. If you've created something, you don't need to credit yourself, but anything else needs to be created. If you forget, there's a danger that you'll be assumed to be committing plagiarism because you're using someone else's work, picture, whatever you want to call it, and it appears to be as if it was yours. So make sure that you credit any images that you use that you didn't create yourself. So they're the assessment criteria. So the next thing I want to do is look at the template that's been provided to you. So here is the template that's been provided for you to use. You don't have to use this template. You can create your own structure, your own PowerPoints. It's just a tool. It gives you some hints about what one would expect to see in your report, but you can change the structure, you can reorder it, you can make sections longer, you can make them shorter, you can add in new sections. It's entirely up to you. This is just something to sort of get you going. So in this template there's some information about essentially who you are and what the coursework is. This isn't critically important, but it's very helpful, because if an examiner downloads your presentation, they may forget which presentation it was. So if you fill in this information, including your candidate number, that means that it will still be anonymous, then it helps identify what this is. This slide doesn't contribute to your word count. So on to the main part of your report. So this is the opening slide. So there's going to be a title here and maybe some kind of image about the thing that you're designing or the thing that you're imagining. Next slide, you saw in both of the examples that had an overview. This is very helpful to help the viewer or reader know what's coming. So an overview. Then the final system idea. So the idea is that you present up front what your final product or extension or system is going to be. So we know where things are going to end up, but you're going to get the opportunity to elaborate on this and give a bit more detail later on in the report. Initial user research, the aims. So what it was you were trying to find out. The method, how you went about conducting your initial user research, who your participants were, and what techniques you used. For example, interviews. The findings, so having conducted that initial user research, what did you find out? The suggestion is 1 to 3 slides. It's up to you if you want to use more. Again, it's a suggestion that you use pictures and graphs, quotations. Next section, development of your ideas. So this is ideation, several slides giving evidence of your initial ideas and how you develop them, and any evaluations that you carried out at this stage. The final product idea. Important thing is you don't just duplicate what you said earlier. This is your opportunity to go into a little bit more detail about the final product. The evaluation of a prototype and the positive findings from that evaluation, and issues, which are the problems that you found, along with some recommendations about how you might adjust the design. Reflections on the design process. So no interaction design process is ever perfect. Things go wrong. Things don't quite work as you expected them to. So this is your opportunity to communicate how successful the methods were when they were applied, and difficulties that you faced, and what you might do differently next time. And the conclusion and the next steps. So it's very important that you start your PowerPoint presentation with a kind of introduction to the subject matter, and finish by providing a conclusion. So you don't just want to stop with your findings, you want to bring everything together and recommend perhaps what could be done next, perhaps some future research or considerations for related products or different designs. And that brings us to the final section, which is just your reference list. It has to be in some kind of academic style. It might be Harvard style, it might be ACM style, it might be the American Psychological Association style. It doesn't matter, as long as you adopt one particular style and apply it consistently throughout your references. And for the report for this year, there is no appendices. There are no appendices. We did have them last year, but they're not a requirement for this, so you don't need to add anything extra. You have to get everything into your 20 slide count.